You can now get, in states where it's legal to have it dispensed, you can get the abortion pill at a pharmacy now.
Wow.
Yeah, that just came out
Great.
last night. The FDA just changed it was an agreement with the manufacturer. So
Amazing.
yeah,
Amazing. Wow.
good
Very
stuff.
cool stuff.
I've got my drink here. Okay.
Good. Oh, thank God. I do too. I wasn't sure if you wanted me to have I
Yes,
always have a tea with me. Like always, even in
I'm a
sick
latte
days.
girl, and Matthew bought me my wedding present was an Italian latte maker and a really nice burr grinder. So
Oh my God. I saw the
we're
photo
set.
on Facebook. I told JC about it actually. I just said like, because we're big coffee drinkers. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't know if the Keurig machine is cutting it anymore. Like it needs to be upgraded now. So I
Highly,
love that
highly recommend
machine.
it. It's
I thought
more
it was from a
work.
friend. I thought it was from a friend. And I was like, God, Kristen, you have amazing friends.
Oh, no, that was his wedding present to me. I gave him a guitar. He gave me an espresso maker, but it's my thing. I love making lattes for us in the morning. He's getting great at it too, but it's more work for sure.
Yes, yes. Is he a musician?
He is, yes.
Nice. Okay. That's
Yeah.
impressive.
Yes.
Nice.
He has an EP. And he did the music for my podcast.
He did?
Yeah. Yeah. Original
I haven't
music by
heard
M.
it.
Kusa.
Okay, nice, nice. Well, I'll have to reach out to him and JC as well, because JC's podcast, obviously, we're always looking for just sound, music. Like it's great. He's got a whole team, which is amazing. But we're always looking to expand. So if Matthew wants to to do
Yeah.
something to Rise Up with Dragon, yeah.
He's looking to get more into his music in 2023.
Good,
I'm
good.
helping him build up his TikTok so that he can start just maybe going live and tinkering
Nice.
around on his synthesizers or on his piano or
Yeah.
whatever. So anyway.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
the queen of going live. I'm terrified of it.
Oh, TikTok. Yeah. I mean, like live TV is a lot of fun, but it's very nerve-wracking, but it's also just so short. Like I try to just tell myself before I go on that I can survive anything for 5 minutes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Have you seen the show, is it the morning show? Yeah, the morning show with Jennifer Aniston and Reese
I
Witherspoon.
haven't seen that. Mm-mm.
Oh, it is wonderful. You should definitely watch it. And then
Okay.
you really feel the tension of what it's like for them to work live. Just
Just
so
like
much
go, go,
drama behind the
go. Yeah.
scenes.
When you're just go, 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 I'm sure that's very like wearing and taxing on your body. And like you have to do a lot to release that energy.
Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you so much for being on my show today, Mieke. You are one of my very first friends that I made when I started my program with Sex Coach You. And it's been an absolute pleasure to watch your career just grow and expand because you started off with coaching and now you are a sex therapist. So
That is correct.
congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Like, I just always love collaborating with you. And, it feels like yesterday that you and I went to that event, the SAR in LA.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just such an incredible experience.
It
And
really
yeah,
was.
it really did.
I'm so happy to count you as a friend and a colleague. And so tell the audience a little bit more about yourself.
Okay. So interesting. I have this little spiel as well when I meet a client for the first time, both in mental health as well as in the sexology realm, where they say, how did you end up where you are right now? Like, how did you decide to be a counselor and a sex therapist? And it's a very interesting journey, and it's definitely not an ordinary one. So I always wanted to be an actor. So when I was 11, I remember I saw Titanic and I told my parents, I was like, I have to move to America because I am going to marry Leonardo DiCaprio one day.
I love
And
it.
they were like, really? They were sort of entertaining the idea. And my mom said, you know what you need to do? You should write him a letter and tell him that when you're 16, I don't know why my mom chose 16. That's like such a weird age.
We'll circle
When you
back for that later.
also he was like much older than me, and she was like, when you're 16, you can move to America and go live with him. And I was like, Mom, okay. So she made me write this letter to Leonardo DiCaprio, and we had this magazine in South Africa that always listed, and I'm sure you get them here as well. God, I haven't read a magazine like actual hard copy magazine in a while, but it had all of the fan email mailing addresses of the stars. So Leonardo DiCaprio's was in there one week, and she said, write him a letter and I'll go and mail it. Now, 11-year-old me didn't know there was like a fan mail. I was like, oh my God, like Leonardo DiCaprio is going to know about me. And then my parents said, if you want him to notice you, you're going to have to sort of become an actor. Like if you want to be in a movie with him, you're going to have to perfect the craft of acting. And so that's how I got into acting itself. And as the years went on, this is like really, really funny. Leonardo DiCaprio sort of disappeared off of the scene for a while. He got the dad bod and he was always photographed on a yacht with some model, but he kind of stopped acting. And I remember by the time I hit 16, I had completely forgotten about him. So my next victim was Orlando Bloom, because then I saw Lord of the Rings. And I'm going into the whole acting thing here, but it kind of leads up to where I am today. And so I said to my parents, I'm going to be in a movie one day with Orlando Bloom. And they said, well, you know what you have to do? Like, you have to continue acting. And so I researched where Orlando Bloom studied acting. And I ended up applying for this school, the British American Drama Academy in London, and I got accepted. Flew to London, spent time there, had some teachers from the Royal Shakespeare Company, and just like it was just an amazing, amazing experience. Tough, but amazing. And then I went back to South Africa and I got my undergrad in acting, so my Bachelor of Arts degree in drama. And I said the next logical step is America. And by that time, Orlando Bloom and Leonardo DiCaprio, they were gone. Like I was in love with the stage and the camera. And so moved to New York City. I worked as an actor there, got a manager after I graduated from that school. And I still have that same manager till this day. So I still audition. And it's just been like such a whirlwind experience, but not a great industry for mental health. Right. I was always under pressure, needed to look a specific way, needed to dress a specific way. I sort of got to realize that the acting industry, when you're going for an audition, talent and the actual audition isn't always what matters. Because I threw out a bunch of really good auditions there, but it's more so if you fit the look of the character. And so for me, it was tough. Every single time I got a no, it would, sort of melt into my self-esteem of maybe I wasn't thin enough or maybe I'm not tall enough. And I just decided, I'm not sure if this is what I want to do, and sort of started opening up my mind to other possibilities for a career. And I was at a friend's house in New York City. He ran an Airbnb and he had a South African woman stay with him for the weekend. And turns out that she was a sexologist. Well, she is. I'm actually a really good friend of hers now. And she's based in Cape Town. So I was really curious. I was like, you have to tell me what this job is. Like, what do you do? South Africans, especially coming from Pretoria, which is a smaller town, can be quite conservative when it comes to sex, especially Afrikaans South Africans. My parents were very different. Thank God for that. They were very, very different. I always felt like I could talk to them about anything in the sexual realm.
Good.
But for the most part, the community that I grew up in was quite close-minded and a little bit more conservative in that sense. So when I spoke to her about what she does for a living, she was like, you're from Pretoria, South Africa? Like, why are you so open to this stuff? And I said, I don't know. I guess maybe it's because I've been living in Manhattan for so many years. And so she said, you really have to explore this as a job opportunity. Like, look into studying human sexuality. And that is how I came across Dr. Patty Britton and just loved working with her. I thought it was a wonderful course. That's how I met you. And we had that awesome experience in LA. What was that place? What was it called?
Bar Sinister.
Bar Sinister. What a fun experience. And so, I just, as I started studying human sexuality a little bit more, I started noticing things within myself, biases and stigma and things that I wouldn't normally even have thought about. So it really, really just opened up my mind to a whole different world. So I started working with clients one-on-one and just loved it. I loved seeing my clients thrive. And I was especially drawn to working with the kink and the fetish communities. So as a mental health therapist as well, if you go on my Psychology Today profile, you'll see very sex worker allied, kink allied, fetish allied, the whole shebang. And so, yeah, worked with this population in particular, and I saw them thrive in their relationships, and it just brought me so much joy. But I needed to do a lot of self-reflection, in that I found that I was sort of starting to live vicariously through my clients and their lives and their relationships. And I had to ask myself the question, what's going on with you? Like, why is it that you're putting all this effort into your clients, but you're not really putting it into your own dating life? And that was a very, very tough realization, coming to terms with the fact that I was miserable in my relationships. Mm-hmm. And I also understood that part of that was living in New York City. The dating scene in New York was really tough. I mean, it left me depressed beyond repair. And then I decided, you know what, I'm gonna take one more go at it. And I swiped right on my husband on Bumble, and that's how we met. And JC is my rock. We've been together now for 5 years. Mm-hmm. So yes,
I remember when you met.
Yes, you've been through it. Like you were there for my journey.
You were there when I met Matthew too, and we had our part 1, and then got back together through the pandemic. And
yes, you know me from my single days. When I was living in the city, and it was a nightmare. Honestly, it was a nightmare.
I'm sure, yeah.
But also,
it wasn't much fun here in Kansas City either, I'll tell you that.
I bet.
We actually got the award in 2022 for worst city to date in the United States.
You're kidding. Why?
I think it's just partly because for 6 months, there's so little to do because we're stuck indoors. It's heavily based around drinking. There's very little to do if you are a sober dater. There's multiple factors, but I think that also part of it is it's just Kansas City, and it's just a mid-level market city.
Yeah.
It's got some great things, but it can be very boring.
Yeah. Okay. I've never been. So yeah, that's interesting, because I always thought New York City, like I just like have these flashbacks of.
I'm sure they had very different issues.
I had great dating experiences as well. Let me not get that wrong. Let me not, set this. Actually,
but you also weren't finding your person.
Absolutely. It was all about just finding the right person. And I'm sure that some of the people that I dated they're more suitable for someone else, and that works for them. But it's interesting that you bring up the dating scene around alcohol. I was in Lake Placid not too long ago. This just reminded me of this experience. And I went to the restroom. We were at this really cool little lodge, and I went to the restroom, and there was a paper that they had put on the mirror, and that while you're washing your hands, they say, if you feel like you're in trouble, order the specific drink, and we will make sure that we get you an Uber, and we'll make sure that you get home safely. And I just thought that was amazing. I was like, ugh, I don't know if
I've seen TikToks about that. And how sad is it that that's needed? But thank you for watching out for ladies. And until we reprogram our society to get men to not sexually assault women, while we're on that road, let's just say we're already on that path.
Yeah.
We've got to have some stop gaps in the meantime. I think that being one good effort for sure.
Absolutely.
But
absolutely.
Yeah, good to see.
I appreciated that a lot. So yes, where was I? So I met JC. JC is a health coach, right? So he's currently expanding his health coaching company to Singapore and Hong Kong, and I worked with him in that realm as well. So I loved the holistic part of it too. And I said, how can I marry, the health and wellness specter with sexology? And it sort of all became this thing called MindSex. But for me, the next logical step was going into counseling. And so I am a mental health counselor, and I work a lot in the sex therapy realm now. And I've noticed that there are just so many people out there who need to be heard. They just want someone to talk to. And these people could range from, people who have rubber fetishes, like dresses full on dollies, and, people who are in love with inanimate objects, all the way through to people who just, want to have missionary sex and feel like there's a lack of connection. So I really work with so many different people. And then with sex workers as well, which is something that I hope we can touch on, because it's a much needed conversation to have. The need that's out there for sex workers to be able to openly disclose what they do for a living and not feel judged by their therapists. So yeah, I think that's how I got to where I am today.
Like I said, it's been wonderful to watch you along this path and see you just, put one thing in front of the other. And now here you are, a graduate in private practice. And like, as you say, like there is such a need for mental health and sexology. Like, so many people don't realize that not every single therapist is equipped to help people with their sex life or their kinks or their fetishes. It doesn't matter. A lot of them have not gone through the additional training that it takes. Like you either have to pick that as your focus or go back and get further education for the sexology components as a therapist. And that's a choice.
No, absolutely. I totally agree with you. I was actually just thinking about this morning. When I go back to looking at when you get your Master of Arts degree in clinical mental health counseling, all of these programs, as wonderful as they are, there is not much of an emphasis on sexuality in counseling. And I find that my biggest, how would I say, the people who reach out to me on Psychology Today often reach out because they see sex therapy listed as the top, and they go, not sure if you can help me, but I've not been able to find the right therapist, or I feel judged every single time I do an intake. Somebody doesn't quite know how to deal with my concerns. And that's not uncommon in the mental health field, because our training, when you do choose sexuality and counseling as an elective, it's an elective, which it shouldn't be. It should be a requirement for graduation. It's really just 10 weeks long, and it just really, really skims the surface of what sexuality is. And so often what happens is counselors find themselves in a situation where they have their own stuff coming into the room with them. There's so much shame around sex. And if we haven't gone through the self-reflective process, like what Dr. Patty put us through, things are going to come up for you in a session with a client, and it's going to stun you, and you are going to sit there and not know what to say. It's going to give off an energy to the client that you're not welcoming, or you're not open to talking about sex. So we're human beings, right? And if we haven't been able to come to terms with our own sexuality, and when I say sexuality, obviously I'm not talking about sexual orientation, I'm talking about just sexual expression and our sexual being, we're not going to be able to hold space for anybody else. And so it gets awkward. It gets really awkward, because how can we expect of a client to sit and tell us about their sexual lives if we don't know how to talk about our own? So, and not with a client, I'm not speaking here about personal self-disclosure, but just in our own lives, being in that.
I'm so glad that you brought that up, because it is sort of, I don't want to say a joke, but it's a common theme that in a lot of realms within therapy, there's people practicing who haven't really dealt with their own stuff. And I think sex is one of the primary things that so many people haven't dealt with. So of course there's therapists that haven't dealt with that stuff, because it's not like sex education is great in this country. So if you're partnering up in your personal life with someone who's got the same exact sex education as you, like, how are you going to work with that? You have to make effort. You have to be diligent and prioritize the importance of your
Mhm.
sexuality being a topic that you can talk about in your relationship.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
it also is sad because in order to have a healthy sex life, you need to be able to comfortably talk about sex with your partner.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
it's a whole thing. You'll be happier in your own life. You'll be better off in practice as well.
Yes.
But yes, you
Yes.
do have to deal with some stuff. Absolutely. I've seen a few mental health professionals here in town just to talk about some of the sexology stuff and help
Mhm.
them work through some of their things so they can be better for their clients. And that's been a really beautiful journey too.
I love that. I love that, Kristen. And I
We're
do
all just
hope.
here to learn and grow, right?
Yes, no, absolutely, absolutely. And here's the thing, we have this concept, this idea that mental health counselors, and you sometimes get this from your clients as well, where they think that you're this all-knowing human being, and really you're not, right? You're just there in that experience with them, and because they're like, oh, tell me what to do. Like my partner and I aren't having enough sex. So this is just an example. I'm not actually referring to an actual client here.
Right.
My partner and I are not having enough sex. Please, Mieke, tell me what I should do. Like, what can I do today to fix this? And I go, whoa, like I cannot tell you what to do. You already have all those answers within you. I can help guide you there, but I can't tell you exactly what to do. So sex therapists, not sex therapist, well, mental health counselors, I should say, because I feel like sex therapists have that deeper level of understanding of sexuality and their own. But mental health counselors are also just human beings who need to figure out their own stuff. And I think that, well, I hope that you'll consider coming up with a program that you can, like an online program where you can train mental health therapists. Maybe we can team up.
You
We
know
can
what?
team up.
There's a couple things we need to team up on, Mieke.
Yes, yes.
So,
I like
yeah.
it. I like it. Yes.
So,
Interesting stuff.
Mieke, you brought up something earlier that got me thinking about some sex in the news stuff. One is about Andrew Tate. Did you see all that with him getting caught with human trafficking? And like everyone's already been talking about the tweets that, got us there, but I don't necessarily want to talk about that real quick. What I found interesting was the conversations that have come now about this form of sex trafficking that he participated in, which is this Loverboy version.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that for a moment?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Have you Go
Sorry.
ahead.
No, I wanted to say this is such an interesting concept because it happens so often, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And when we think human trafficking, I think our minds immediately go to something like Liam Neeson's movie Taken, like the Taken movies, right? But human trafficking can happen in so many different forms, and we need to start talking more about it, what it looks like. It's happening in personal relationships, right? So tough stuff.
Something in the media, I think that was a good recent representation of the Loverboy method was on White Lotus season 2.
Yes.
Handsome man comes in and he, says all the right things and treats you the right ways. And then some things are starting to turn. Not to give away White Lotus. If you haven't watched it, that's on you. Like, go finish it. But Andrew Tate used that method of he admitted it, that he was making someone his girlfriend, getting them to fall in love with him, getting them to start a cam site or be on OnlyFans, something, and then taking the money for it.
Yeah.
And he was doing this over and over and over again. Like, that is more often than not what sex trafficking looks like. It's from people that people you're involved with, even family members sometimes. It's not the stranger danger. Not to say that doesn't exist, but it's so minuscule.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And, it's interesting because I've heard people, let's look at sites like Pornhub, for example. We're not really knowing what we're watching there. We don't really know how that performer has been coerced into making these videos, right? And so we tend to think that when we hear somebody go ooh and ah, and they look like they're enjoying themselves, that it's consensual. And that is absolutely not the case. So there are so many. This is a very, very complex topic to get into, because obviously I also do think that we need to consider the other side of this, where it's okay. So if we're going to say that performers on, let's say, for example, Pornhub, these videos that we see are being human trafficked, then what about girls who are doing phone sex, or
Right.
women who are by choice sex
Yeah.
workers? So
Right.
they,
We've
yeah,
got to have room for protecting those who are not doing it on their own free will and
mhm,
providing space for those that want to do it. Like,
absolutely,
not all porn is human trafficking. All
yeah,
porn is sex work. Sorry. Like our congressperson here in Missouri wants to equate all porn to sex trafficking. She was
mm,
one of the ones who helped get FOSTA SESTA passed.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
That's
like,
unfortunate. It is.
and
It's very unfortunate.
what do you talk about with your clients when it comes to the conversation around things like ethical porn and where they're sourcing their adult content?
Oh, yeah, no, this is really interesting. So, it's a tough conversation to have, because I often tell my clients, obviously we'll get it more in depth with, where do you find your porn? Like, how do you know that this person is actually in the scene consensually? And most of the time they'll say, I really don't. Like, it's not even something that crosses my mind,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that that's what makes it difficult, is that there isn't an awareness around what ethical porn is and what unethical porn
Yeah.
is. Um, so sex is, there's so much shame around it that I think for the most part, when it's sometimes like a compulsion, especially people who really, really indulge. Like I work a lot with, I know this is controversial, sex addiction, right?
Mm-hmm.
The topic of people will come in and say, I think that I have a porn addiction. And so there's this compulsion around it, where the kind of porn that I watch might be what other people would consider to be very shocking, right? So they find this stuff on sites that don't necessarily have performers post their own stuff. And
Okay.
like OnlyFans, for example, I would say, um, I don't know, to be honest. This is really interesting that you bring it up, because you just said with the sex trafficking and OnlyFans, I mean, it could happen on OnlyFans as
It can
well.
happen on OnlyFans. I would say that more likely than not, people on that site are a little more in control, but you don't know
You don't know.
who's controlling their bank account. I would think that if you're able to make a request and get a custom video and have some interaction with them, maybe, I don't know, but like,
Yeah.
there's no guarantees. But there's definitely no guarantees on something like Pornhub that they're of age, that they
Mm-hmm.
were not on drugs, that they weren't coerced, and that they're getting paid for that.
Yeah.
Any
So,
schmo that uploaded that video and is making the money off it, not the performers, nor the producers, nor the camera people. You know what I mean?
absolutely. Absolutely. And then think about revenge porn as
Yep.
well, right? That
Yep.
sort of comes into play here too. Um, but where I was going with this is we don't really know, right? But I think with something like Pornhub, what makes it different is that we don't get to see their ID. We don't get to see how old that performer really is, right? So
Mm-hmm.
what are we watching?
Mm-hmm.
When we're looking at cheerleader stuff, for example, what would be considered role play? Do we know that that person is of age? Right. So with something like OnlyFans, when someone uploads their content, they have to verify that they are of a legal age, right?
Yeah.
So at least we have that safety going for us.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, ethical porn, it's a tough one, because I think there's so much shame around sex. So when I talk to clients about that, I'll say, okay, so you watch porn and then you're done. And then typically what they feel is there's a lot of shame. So I think what they want to do is they sometimes just want to push away the fact that they even watched porn, right? So there's no like thinking about, oh, I don't want to think about that. Like, it's done. I'm not doing it again. I don't want to think about whether it was ethical or not ethical. So, but it's a consistent conversation to have. Um, but I was going to say, with regards to knowing who's being trafficked versus who is doing it because they really want to do it, that's where the importance of a sexologist and a sex therapist or just a mental health counselor comes in, right? Because both of these individuals need support. Because there's a savior mentality when it comes to sex workers, right? I work with them all the time, so I completely understand. It's this idea of, oh, okay, so you're pretending to enjoy doing this. There's no possible way that you could have chosen to go into this line of work, right? So we want to save these individuals, even though they are consenting adults who love what they do. So you'll often find, and I've, in my work with sexology, where I work with sex workers, I often find them saying that these men will say, why don't you just quit? You're so much better than this. I can take care of you.
Mm-hmm.
And then I want to say, well, first of all, why are you here? Like, what are you doing? Are you trying to pinpoint or, find somebody specific who you feel is vulnerable so you can take them out of their job and give them a life? But what happens in that life?
Mm-hmm.
Is that then where it goes from consensual to trafficking? Right? You're essentially asking somebody who's choosing a career to give up that career, which means that now there is this financial hold. So financial abuse, you have a financial hold on them.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you make them do? Because now they're stuck, right? For the most part, the women that I work with, I would say, are very strong. Very, very, no way, but it is interesting to me that it happens so often.
Yeah. I love that you work with sex workers. I love having sex workers as friends and clients. And you and I think, are both of the same belief that sex work is work.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
what you pointed out there being the critical factor of this is for some people their career. And that is fine. There is, for you and I, no judgment for that. But like you say, there's so many people out there who'll be like, you can do better than this. Don't you want to do better? Some of these people are making a lot of money,
Yes.
like a
Oh, yeah.
lot of money, and they
A
have
lot.
fun while they're doing it. This is their choice. Uh, a lot of them have educations. A lot of them have had careers. These aren't just people who are doing it because it's their only choice.
Yeah. Yeah. I know a lot of sex workers, phone sex operators, escorts, people who have doctorates, master's degrees, and they end up not wanting to go into that field. And they love what they do. And they say, it's something that I enjoy. It's actually very empowering. And there's just no reason why we have to villainize that industry. Also, if we are able to legalize sex work, those individuals can get health insurance. They can get benefits, right? There are things that we
they
can
can
do.
unionize.
They can unionize. We can get them the physical care that they need, like health insurance, for example. So it's a win-win all around. I know that there will be so many varying opinions on this. I know that there will be people who are going to be like, I'm going to slap you on the wrist. Why did you say that? But yeah, that's how I feel about it. I really do.
Oh, on this podcast, there's never been a guest that hasn't been talking about sex work in a way that's like, it is work. We should decriminalize it. The whole process that's around sex work right now, the very carceral mentality around it, it's got to shift. It's not doing anyone any good.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people that I've spoken to about sex work, in particular women, when they hear that sex work needs to be legalized, what they'll often say is, oh, but then wouldn't that give more men permission to go out and hire prostitutes or escorts? And to them, I want to say, they're going to do it anyway if they want to.
Yeah, they're going to do it anyway. Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Like I always focus on saying like decriminalization versus legalization, because like decrim opens up the states to kind of regulate the system, right? And so yes, you can get into a situation where if you're saying, oh, well, you have to have a license for a brothel, then you get into is it cost prohibitive for someone who's been a sex worker for 20 years and wants to be a madam, wants to open up a house? Is it cost prohibitive for this, trans sex worker versus this old rich white guy? Like you saw in Cat House, they're all old rich white guys that own those brothels in Nevada. Yeah, you could end up with a system like that. So it's a slippery slope no matter what we do, but something's got to change.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I just wanted to, for a moment, I know that we're sort of running out of time, but I just wanted to, for a moment, bring in the importance of consent, especially now that we've spoken about what has happened with this whole Andrew Tate situation. There is so much stigma around the BDSM community, for example. I believe that the only way that we are going to break the stigma is very similar to how we break stigma in the mental health field, and that is psychoeducation, right? What we don't know, we fear and we push away, we stigmatize, because it comes from a place of the unknown, which leads to anxiety, right? So when we don't understand something, we tend to either make fun of it but interestingly enough, we're more drawn to it, aren't we? So look at where we are at with sex education in America, right? We're told to abstain. We're told to, put the condom on the banana, right? Like, this is how you do it. But that makes us more interested in what's out there, right? Because what we squash will always come back up. And sometimes with a vengeance, right? And that's why we find that Pornhub, for example, where there's not no ethical porn, but for the most part, we don't know where that porn comes from, is explored so often, because where else do kids go to learn, right? Which is very sad. But anyway, where I was going with this is that it's so important for us to start talking about sex. So let's take, for example, the media. The show Billions. I don't know if you've seen that.
I've seen a few episodes.
Yes. Billions, right.
I know what you're talking about. Yes.
I'm going to use this as a prime example. So this high-powered district attorney and his wife, they play around in the BDSM realm. She's his dominant and he's her submissive, right? And I remember I was with a group of people one day and we started talking about TV shows, and I said, have you guys seen Billions? Like, it's amazing. I love that show. And they all went, oh yeah, is that with like the district attorney who's like, he's kind of weird, like he's into like weird sexual shit? And I'm like, oh, let me explain to you what that really is, So it's very, very common for people in high-powered positions to feel more submissive in the bedroom because they can finally let go. They can finally be in a position where they don't have to make every single decision. That's not everybody in high-powered positions, of course, but it happens very, very often.
Yes.
And I think what needs to be explored, and a community that we can really learn consent from, is the BDSM community. Because consent lies at the heart of BDSM. I'm not saying we should all go out and join the BDSM community, but we can certainly learn a lot from them about boundary setting, right? What is consensual and what isn't, because it's so often not just black and white.
Yeah.
There's a lot of gray, and it's about constantly checking in with your partner, constantly checking in with your friends and asking when you see them in certain relationships, especially where there are narcissistic tendencies, you pick up on that. When you see them in those kinds of relationships, ask them if they're okay. Even if they say they are, check in. Look for signs that you can notice, right? Are they being coerced into something? Has their behavior changed since they've been with this person? Are they cutting themselves off from really, really important relationships in their lives? Isolating, anxiety, depression, like all of these, like, are they exhibiting any of these signs? And only then can we really help people who might very well be stuck in these lover boy situations.
Absolutely. And I've definitely heard some of the judgment from people when I'm, talking about either media or experiences that, I've had or others have had, talking about BDSM and kink, things like that, and seeing their like, the either looks they give or the like, oh, or the things they say, for sure. But I also do think about, wow, if you had only gotten a proper education about this topic long ago, it wouldn't be so stigmatized. So thank you for bringing that up, is that, that's something that I contemplate often and think about, like, am I doing everything I can to help put people on the right path to destigmatize? Because often as a coach, because they've already gone to therapy oftentimes before me, they've usually worked through the like why they got to this point. Whereas they're usually often at a place of acceptance with me. And maybe some people are starting off that personal acceptance, and they've started exposing themselves to different things. But to actually change one's mind from a place of judgment and thinking something is dirty or it's wrong or it's abusive, to helping them understand that under the right circumstances, it can be empowering. And with consent, it can be beautiful and fun and a positive experience for all involved.
Yeah, this is really interesting that you bring up consent can be beautiful and fun, right? Because I think that that's how we need to reframe our thought around it. Because a lot of people will say, but, everything nowadays seems so mechanical, right? After Me Too, the Me Too movement, people are saying, I just don't know if I'm allowed to touch this person or if I'm allowed to even hug this person, or people have become sort of afraid, right? So they'll say, everything now seems so mechanical and planned out. There's no spontaneity in it. To which I say that's absolute rubbish, right? Consent is sexy.
Yes, thank you.
Making someone feel safe and loved and respected, and knowing that you are not somebody who pushes boundaries, and that person knows that and can trust you. There's nothing more attractive than that.
Yeah. And, I have found that the people who are bringing this up to me also in practice are the ones who it's like, you're the last person that anyone's worried about. Like, you are probably the person that actually does maintain boundaries. You're just actually considering other people's feelings because you're empathetic. It's all those jackasses out there who this isn't even crossing their minds, that those are the ones we wish were paying attention to these conversations.
Absolutely.
Because especially the men in my practice who are saying, I don't want to come across as a jerk. I don't want to bother somebody. I certainly don't want to cross any lines. They are like the last people that I'm worried about doing that. Mostly because they actually have that concern. Like, because the fact that your intention is to not be that person, I'm not going to be that person.
Exactly. Self-awareness.
But let me help you feel comfortable with it. And sometimes it's just like easing their minds that they're not that guy already. The other guys out there, the ones that should be in this office right now, more about consent and
totally. But that's probably not going to happen, right? That's probably not going to happen because there's a lack of self-awareness there. And what do we do? What do we do with the lack of self-awareness? Kind of just have to wait for them to burn a little bit so that they can become more self-aware. But it's not an easy one. I just wanted to say that I love the idea of people getting therapy, right? Everybody should be in therapy, by the way. My therapy cat isn't here with me today, Delilah. My clients love her. Delilah's in therapy. She does many sessions a day with me. So everyone should be in therapy. And I think that what you're doing with sexology and what both of us are doing in terms of that realm is wonderful when somebody's already gone through therapy. They've worked through the biopsychosocial aspect of things, and then move on to, okay, let's focus more on solution-based things. How do we move you forward now that you're at this point of acceptance?
Yeah. There are definitely people who have come to me. I'm like, I absolutely can help you with some things, but I really think that you would be better served by attending therapy first and working through a few things, and then you'll be ready for me. It's not a no, it's just this is going to be a process. And I'm so proud of you and happy for you that you're ready for this process.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this step is critical for you first.
Absolutely. I love it.
Yeah. Mieke, how do the people find you online?
Wow. Okay. So this is an interesting one. I have a meditation podcast called Calmer Mind that I actually have not uploaded in a while, but
That's okay. You're my first episode in like 2 months. So
okay, good. Oh, well, mine's like a year, I think, because it's just been so busy with school. But it's called Calmer Mind. You can find me on Instagram at Calmer Mind, KARMAMIND _ at Calmer Mind. And I'm really excited. I'm actually bringing out a clothing line for Calmer Mind too. So
cool.
Everything originally started out as MindSex. Mindfulness meets sexuality, because the brain is the biggest sex organ of all. And then I realized that people still clutch their pearls at the word sex. So it sort of melded into Calmer Mind, which is mindfulness practice. How can we bring mindfulness into our relationships with self and others? And so from there on, I went, what other cool stuff can I do? And so I'm in the process of writing a book. I'm actually in the process of writing 2 books. The one is Stop Torturing Yourself, right? How to stop negative self-talk. And then the other one is The Art of Oral Sex, AURAL, how to learn how to dirty talk.
I love
So
it.
those are the 2 books that I'm working on. But yeah, so coming out with a under MindSex with some intimate products and just like really cool goodies that I'll expand on a little bit more, and then under Calmer Mind with meditation gear.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And if someone was wanting to work with you, you are licensed in which states?
I'm licensed in Connecticut, right? So I'll probably end up being licensed in New York as well as of next year. But for now, it's just Connecticut. And people can find me on Psychology Today under Mieke Stapelberg.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, we talked about a wide variety of things around sex work and mental health and destigmatizing. And I'm so happy that you got to be my very first video for 2023, my very first video podcast, I should say.
Nice.
So thank you for joining me. I wish you all the best. You're absolutely amazing. And just keep up the great work.
Awesome. Thank you, Kristen, so much for having me. I always appreciate having a platform to speak about these were very important topics to talk about today. So thanks for that.
Thank you.